Hi, everybody. Charlie and Linda Bloom here. We're back from our magical mystery tour. We've been in India for almost 3 weeks. It's really good to be back. We had a marvelous trip, and I'm so happy to be reunited with you. I missed you. So today's topic is those who make the checklist often don't make it. And we got a lot of hits when we posted this as a blog. So we wanted to bring it to you in the Facebook Live. And what we're talking about is when we're shopping around and hunting around and looking for somebody who might be an eligible partner with us, sometimes they look really good on paper. They can be attractive, they can be educated, they might have degrees, they might have a good job, they might be financially fit, they might be of the same ethnic group or the religion and have some interests in common, and our parents like them, maybe our friends like them.
So what's the catch?
There's a magic factor that can be missing, because all of these things are really only one layer of who we are and who they are. Mm-hmm. And there's a deeper level, and we talk about our natural knowing. Sometimes we refer to this as the soul knows. Some intuitive part of ourselves is not really magnetized to this person. Intellectually, rationally, reasonably, they may seem like, I really would like to be with a person that's got all of these characteristics, but if we kiss them and it's bland, and if we don't feel that, emotional charge with them, sometimes people are in hope that they might be able to grow it, and I do think it's worth giving the relationship a chance to explore it and see if some, magnetic force could occur. But often it doesn't. And I recommend to people that they don't go into a relationship thinking that they're going to change the other person so that it's got more vitality and more aliveness and more chemistry. Usually it's either there or it's not there. And what's not there is one of the things that we want to delve into here, because we want people to know what the deeper intuitive draws are that really give you the best possible beginnings for creating a partnership that's going to be very alive and vital. So I want to tell you that one of the things that we find magnetic and attractive in another person is really that they're very different than we are. Some deep, wise knowing in us doesn't even want to be attracted to a person who's just like us, because they've got the same strengths we have. Some intuitive, unconscious part of us is attracted to somebody who has strengths that we don't have. And we refer to that as the drive to wholeness. That some wise parts of us wants to be bigger, wants to be grander, wants to be fuller, wants to be more whole. And intuitively, we're drawn to people who are different than we are, have different strengths than we are, and that they have something to bring to us to enhance our life and teach us. Another important ingredient of the chemistry and the magnetic force is we have matching wounds. And if they've gotten to adulthood without being wounded, they're a rare bird. All of us come into adulthood with some kind of trauma in our life or sore spots left over from our families, maybe injured by a parent, maybe injured by a sibling, maybe injured in school where we were shamed. And that this person could be a great healer to us and us to them. For some of the places that are dented, some of the places that are wounded, some of the places that are scarred. And we may not realize that, especially in the beginning of the relationship, that that's one of the things that's bonding us together, but we've got some healing work to do together. And we might as well pay attention to what the unconscious commitments are that are really drawing us to another person.
Well, if you've been watching any of our previous shows, you've probably heard us make reference to what we refer to as the shadow. And the shadow is essentially comprised of those aspects of ourselves, of our personalities, that we generally don't accept responsibility for, or don't own, or aren't even aware of sometimes. And they're often the counterpart of the aspects of ourselves that we are more clear about, more identified with, more comfortable with, and feel are more positive. The shadow isn't necessarily negative, but it's just aspects of ourselves that influence who we are and what we do, and our likes and dislikes that operate below the surface of our awareness. So when we talk about the list, the checklist, which we hear a lot about from people who are in search of a potential partner, you probably know what we're referring to. It's, that list of the characters, like Linda mentioned, examples, like what do they look like? What are their interests? What is their religion? What
sense of humor,
education, things that are more overt, more obvious, and certainly relevant and to making a decision about a potential partner, whether it's temporary or a life partner. Those are important factors, but there are also shadow qualities that are also relevant and important that often escape our awareness. And then when we're not aware of them, we're not as able to recognize them if they're there, or to be aware of them not being there. So some of these shadow qualities are not so obvious, and it's, you can tell pretty quickly after meeting somebody and spending a little bit of time talking with them, the answers to most of the obvious questions that we just referred to, like education, looks, et cetera, all that stuff that you can find out pretty quickly. So what we want to talk about today are what some of the other qualities are that may be not only as important, but in some ways even more important in terms of having a long, sustained, healthy relationship with somebody.
So we want to give you some examples. I want to say hi to Gary. One example, and I think that this is not in a lot of people's consciousness, but I wish to instill it in more people's consciousness, as an interest in personal growth and development. And when you go on the web and you see people, what they're putting on their dating sites, they say interest in hiking, swimming, climbing, going to the beach, partying, and must like dogs. Do you know? And those are good. I'm not saying that those areas of interest aren't good. I'm just saying that we want to prompt you to look and to tell yourself the truth and to go public with your prayer, if you're brave enough to risk that, and really declare what it is that you are looking for. If you want somebody to join you in utilizing the relationship for personal growth, to learn to enhance yourself, to grow to be a bigger person, then tell the truth about it. If you want somebody who's empathic, compassionate, a good listener, who can be there with you and give you feedback about how they're impressed by you, how they may be put off by you, who will be honest with you, and not in a defensive and combative way, but with the intention of growing communication skills that will enhance your relationship. That's a really strong agreement that can move you along your path. To find somebody who values both togetherness time and individual time, because it does take solitude and independence, but it also takes emotional intimacy, and connection. And the happiest couples that we've ever met are champs in both areas. They can be alone with themselves, happily alone with themselves, not lonely, but alone. And they also can really open themselves up to be seen, the innermost part of themselves, and relish emotional intimacy. So Charlie's going to give you a few examples of some things that are in the wants department. This is, for some people, the must-have department. And then we'll also tell you some of the things that you can be honest with yourself and declare that you don't want. But we're still in the wants right now.
Yeah, and the point I want to make here is that these examples that Linda's giving and that I'm going to be giving, these are not the answers to what should be on your list.
Right.
These are simply examples, and they happen to be things that we value ourselves. And they may not, some of them may or may not be on your list, and that's fine. But the point of this whole thing is to become aware of what it is that really matters for you in terms of what it is that you believe and hope and expect is going to enhance the quality of your life, which includes being happy, having pleasure with each other, physical attraction, all these things. We're not denigrating any of them. We're not diminishing the importance of that. But so often what people look at are the things that are not necessarily life enhancing. They may be providing fun, pleasure, things that we certainly want to have in a relationship. But we want to encourage you to look a little bit more deeply about what are the qualities in somebody that would really bring more fullness, more passion, more aliveness, more authenticity into your life, because those are the things that really impact on the quality of your life.
So rather than pleasure, which can be so fleeting, as wonderful as it is, we're going for the deep, sustained well-being over the long term.
Not at the expense of pleasure.
No,
This is
both
in addition to, we would just want to bring some of these things more fully into the foreground rather than having them so far back in the background that we're not even considering them when we're looking at the possibility of a potential partner. So another thing is, are you looking for somebody who is sufficiently secure in themselves that they don't need to be controlling? Sometimes, we get into relationships with people who can be very controlling. They have certain ideas about the way we should be. They can put pressure on us to be a certain way, judge us if we're not. So,
and maybe possessive.
Yeah, possession is another form of control. So if that's something that's important to you, be clear about it. We're not necessarily saying that you should put these things in writing and, put them on your Facebook page.
Or you could.
But at the very least, be aware of this so that when you're speaking to somebody, when you're interviewing people, when you're reaching out to, find out who's out there, that you're looking in terms of the degree to which this person is fulfilling some of your deeper values. All right, so moving right along, honesty. Honesty, in our opinion, is like a deal breaker. There are people out there, some of you may know them, who find it okay to lie. Let's call a spade a spade. I mean, they have ways of justifying it, of rationalizing it. They might call it a white lie. They might have good reasons to explain why it's justified. But bottom line is that if somebody doesn't have an intention to be honest, then that really limits what you can count on in terms of the quality of trust in a relationship. So that's something that you want to be aware of, and that you want to, you may not want to put that on your written list that you put out to the public, or you may, But whether you do or not, if you're seriously considering someone as a potential partner, that is a question that you want to get answered. You want to really find out from them, how do they hold honesty? How conditional are they? What conditions might they see as being legitimately used for excuses to rationalize not being honest? What are their thoughts about it? So that character trait of honesty is something that you might want to put on the list. Mm-hmm. Let's see, what else?
Responsibility.
Yeah, responsibility, personal responsibility. Are you looking for someone who is holding themselves responsible for the fulfillment of their own needs and desires? Or is that person somebody who expects you to provide that for them, and that your job is to make sure that they get that need fulfilled? So how responsible are they? How willing are they to be responsible for their own happiness, for their own experience, for their own life? And, you know, the challenge of any great relationship is that both people have to be really willing to be responsible at that level, but at the same time, to be able to be vulnerable enough to accept and give support to each other. So there's a big difference between supporting somebody and being responsible for their well-being or their happiness. Mm-hmm. So that's another example of a quality that you might want to be mindful about when you're looking into somebody as a potential partner.
And there are other qualities as well. And each one of us has our own individual preferences about which qualities mean the most to us. For some of us, it may be really important that we have someone who's patient and kind and generous. For others of us, it may be more important that they're a high integrity person, like Charlie's saying about honesty being so incredibly important. For some people, the quality of commitment is of really high importance. You may have had people in your life before that you opened your heart to and let yourself fall in love with who were short in the commitment department, and they hurt you, maybe even broke your heart. And so commitment rose up high on your priority list in terms of what you're looking for.
Now, some of these things you can't really assess very accurately for a while. It can take a while, for instance, to find out what some of the deeper qualities are, like in integrity, compassion, commitment. You may get indicators early on, but it's hard to tell. And very often you can be surprised, like you were
I had a big shocker, because it was really important to me when I was on the hunt looking for a life partner and somebody to father my children, that I found somebody that was flexible, because in my family of origin, rigidity was one of the characteristics. And I wanted somebody who was supportive and who would share power with me, who was egalitarian. And it was not a power distribution like that in my family. And so I hunted high and low, and I told Charlie what I wanted early when I met him, and we had agreement. And in the early years we were together, I think those characteristics that I so prized were really obvious, and they were evident, and they were manifest. And then we had a big life change when we moved to the West Coast, and he took a job and had kind of a personality transformation. And I said, where's my laid back, easygoing hippie guy who plays guitar? He's swaggering around in a 3-piece suit. I don't even know this man. And it was a shocker to me. And there was an aspect of him that was really much more ambitious than I had ever known. He didn't know it either. And that,
surprising myself.
That hard driving striving for status, power, and influence that I was trying so hard to get away from my family of origin, all of a sudden was manifesting right before my eyes. I'm not saying that that has to be a deal breaker if some shadowy things erupt. I'm saying it's a piece of work when the person that you've already chosen, maybe even lived with for years, surprises you that another part of their personality starts to show itself. And you may have some big lessons in patience and forgiveness and tolerance and acceptance, encouraged to speak your truth in the face of living in a way that may not be really working for you.
And I just want to add here, if you're interested in hearing a few more details about how that expression of that shadow side of me affected our life, we just happened to have finished writing a book that just came out yesterday, as a matter of fact. It's on Amazon, about that. And it's called That Which Doesn't Kill Us. How one couple got stronger at the broken places.
You tell the whole gory story.
And it's pretty raw, but it does give you a very vivid example of what can happen when there's a shadow eruption, when a part of a person's personality that had not been revealed, that maybe they themselves didn't even know was there, under certain circumstances, can bring out parts of ourselves, good and bad, positive or negative, that we didn't even know were there.
And there were some characteristics showing themselves in my partner that were definitely not on my want to have checklist. They were on my don't want to have checklist. Yeah. And it was a struggle, and it really looked to me like we probably weren't going to make it through that dark passage. Mm-hmm. But we're steady plotters, and we got some really good help along the way. Some workshop leaders, some spiritual teachers gave us some really sage advice.
And some good tools, too. And it calmed me down a lot, because I was so angry that I didn't get Prince Charming, and I wasn't having Life Charming, and I certainly wasn't Mother Charming, because I was such a stress case and irritable. But the mindfulness practice really took me a long way towards settling me down. I will be forever grateful all my life to Jack Kornfield for that. I got some really good help from Stephen and Andrea Levine, who taught me about forgiveness and non-attachment, and from Barry and Joyce Vassell, who taught me about making a conscious choice to take off my dark glasses that I was looking at Charlie through and seeing all his flaws and the broken agreements, and I was marinating in resentment, and put on the rose-colored glasses and see his beauty and look through eyes of appreciation and gratitude and see why I was so attracted to him in the beginning, the deeper qualities of this man's personality, that see, even when we were at our worst, there was a part of me that knew he was a good man, a decent man, a man of integrity, a man of devotion, and he was a little lost and sort of deranged and preoccupied for a while. But we hung in there, and he came through, and we burst through, and we got through that dark passage. And from making that deep, dark descent, we came up even higher than we had been before. So I'm really grateful that I didn't bail out, came pretty close. And I'm really grateful to Charlie that he didn't bail out, because it was a rough road. So, he made my checklist, both the obvious ones, the conscious ones, and the deeper, the more intuitive knowing. He met the criteria. But then people grow and people change, and your circumstances of your life change. And what might have been on your checklist may have to be flexible and not be too rigidly attached to what it has to look like. Because if you want to come through those dark winters to the spring where things can grow again, you have to hold the faith that the possibility is there, the good raw materials are there, and take responsibility for rolling up your sleeves and getting to work on them. Mm-hmm. So we have a few minutes left. Let's just mention very briefly some of the things that you may want to be clear you do not want to be on the checklist. Yeah, some of the things that you want to red flag.
You don't want somebody who blames. We're big fans of blame fasting. Blame, criticism, judgment is lethal to relationships. And some people are pretty sloppy about the way they express themselves.
Let's be realistic here. We all blame.
Mm-hmm.
We all can be judgmental. We all have those tendencies. Here's the variable that you want to be mindful about is this a person who is attached to their judgments, who is attached to being right, who needs to be in control, who does not see any problem with blaming and being
throwing
this way.
Their judgments
There's
around
no
and
motivation,
causing harm.
Yeah, no motivation to be more open-minded, more accepting, more tolerant, more forgiving. If there is no motivation for that, that's a serious red flag.
Run as fast as you can in the other direction. And some of the people who are the big-time blamers, they're also perfectionistic. And there's a certain rigidity. And you want to beware of that too, because flexibility is really required if you're going to have a great relationship.
I just want to be careful about not saying what should or shouldn't be on the list here. Some people do not have a problem with perfectionism, their own or their partners. So this is an example of things that you might want to think about. Am I okay with a person who does have a tendency to blame? Maybe you may be, but just to be clear about that, is perfectionism in another person, which is likely to get projected onto you in terms of their expectations of you, is that okay for you? Or can you live with that?
And here's another example. Some people can live okay and take it and dish it out if their partner has a sharp tongue and uses sarcasm. I couldn't abide it. And when Charlie tried it on me, because that's how people talked in his family, he got feedback right away that I was wounded by it and that wouldn't work for me. And so I wanted to clean things up, but fast, that those kinds of remarks, I don't consider it to be funny, that it's over the line to be cutting.
And I still use sarcasm occasionally.
And you usually stay on the line of being cute,
I'm
about it.
I'm sensitive
Rascal,
to what
not
it is
criminal.
that Linda can tolerate and what she can't. Usually I don't go over the line, but sometimes I do. And if I do, I clean it up. But what's important is just to be aware of where your lines are, what is okay with you, what is a deal breaker, what is not, what isn't okay, and what you would need to see from your partner in order to feel more accepting of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, do we have anything else here? Yeah, I mean, you get the point. We're just wanting you to bring more fully into awareness what really matters to you, not to exclude the things that show up more immediately, that are more obvious, because they're important too, but just to look beyond that into what is it that really matters? What is it that really feeds my heart and soul, not just my emotions?
And it all starts with us. We have to tell ourselves the truth about what has the deepest heart and meaning for us. And be careful of being caught in the romantic myth that love conquers all. Love is a pretty potent force. It's a powerful force. But if you go into a relationship with somebody who doesn't meet the specific criteria that are really important to you, with an idea that you've got a home improvement plan and you're going to love them and they're going to change, you're setting yourself up for a lot of heartache and difficulty, because they're going to push back. They're going to want to be accepted as they are. They're not going to want you to make them over. So be careful not to be caught in that myth that's a bit arrogant, actually, to think that you can change somebody into the form that you really want to have them be.
So with that, we will bid you adieu for the day and for the week until next week, when we're going to talk about what?
The topic is commitment can set you free.
So you have a few days to figure out how that could possibly be. But we're going to tell you next week how it is.
I just want to tell you a piece of feedback that we got about our book today. We were talking to someone this morning, and when he sat down to read it, he said he couldn't stop. It was such a page turner. He read the whole thing in a day. He was pretty impressed with the book, and it was wonderful feedback for us to hear. So I hope that you folks listening, audience, will avail yourself of our newest book, book number 4, that just came out this week. We're really proud and very excited about the book launch.
Adios. See you next week.
next week. Is that how you turn it off?
I think you do it there.
Here. End. Okay. Video end.